So we have the sea turtle made out of turquoise. It's kind of a mosaic. Grab your supplies and we'll get started painting this, teaching you this technique. We have the sea turtle here, a tortoise, and we're going to paint this. It's not a realistic looking turtle. It's more a little like jewelry or mosaic, if you want to think about that. So I'm going to make this sort of turquoisey. So you can follow along, but you're welcome to paint yours at home however you want. I've mixed up out of my woodland set some turquoises using this stream and pond, a little deep moss, and daylight in a couple different more or less over here. So I'm dipping into this kind of turquoisey paint, and I'm going to kind of fill in these spots along here. You can see I'm not going exactly to the edge in every single one. I can kind of, it's got a lot of water in here, so I'm just kind of moving that around. The water will dissipate and then it'll evaporate, and then we'll be left with the pigment, and we may put more layers in there. And so I'm kind of mixing up a little bit of these greens and blues. I can kind of drop in a little bit of this green into my turquoise to give it some dimension, and then I'm using a little bit of this redwood to kind of pop in while it's wet to make it look like that veining that you would see in turquoise, that kind of rusty red color. All right, so I'm going to carry on, and I'm just kind of picking. They're all very, very similar, made from the same colors. A few different ones as I go along, and I may pop a little bit in as pick from a new color. And now that some of that water has evaporated, I'm going to go a little closer to the lines there. So I'm going to stop there and work on the inside. Got us warmed up. I'm just going to now show you just whatever pigment was left on my brush here. You can leave some white of the paper like I did there and see how that looks, and fill that in. And now I can pop in some of that turquoise. So I kind of have a green and a turquoise and a few shades of that mixed up over here. Going to now go on to the next part of the shell, and I will go over the white a little bit later, so I don't need to have it so perfect. Popping in some of that green, and if you really want more blue in yours to look like a true turquoise, like as if it were stone that we're doing here, then you can certainly just pull right out of that palette over here. And I'd like each one to look a little bit different. Now see how that kind of dissipated? It's very pretty, but because it wasn't very dry when I put that rust in there, it really dissipated more than I would have liked. So when it's kind of tacky wet is a good time to just tap it in a couple corners. Don't put it everywhere. Let's see, I'll put some here in the corner. Maybe if you want to try to get like a line, it'll be a little tricky, but you can try to do that like you would see that veining in the stone. All right, so I'm going to keep working. You can see section by section of putting in that first layer. And this is just really playing around with how wet is the paint, how dry is it, to see how much these dissipate. So that kind of stayed put. These kind of blended out a little bit more. And that's just based on how much water is still left in that area. So I'll take a little bit of this green, and now you don't want to overdo it, but it'll give that nice textured look. It's the same process over and over, so I'll speed this up so you can kind of see me doing it, but then I will show you how I do these other little parts as well. And what I'm going to show you too is at the end I'll take a clear brush and just kind of go over this white line, just barely picking up some of that pigment so that it's distinct but not completely bright white. That's why I don't mind if some of it goes over the lines. But I do want to keep it kind of having these crisp edges inside my pen line. That's why I'm not just painting over the whole thing. Okay, so now I've mixed up some colors here, and hopefully they'll match pretty well to what I've already done. I'm not going to fill in each little space here, but I'm just kind of depositing a little bit of paint with the tip of my brush here, and then I want to come in and kind of probably typically leave a little bit more white spaces to fill in some of that, but that way we get a little bit of nuance there. And I'm going to put a tad bit of this rust color to make it look like a little mosaic of turquoise, the stone. And I'll just follow this along the lines, maybe put a little bit in there. We can also fill in this with a little bit of tan, or you could just fill it in with green. In his head, I'm going to fill these in a little more carefully like I did down here. And that's more of the green. Now I'll pick more of the blue. And you can see I kind of planned to skip a few so that I can not have the same colors next to each other in each place. Now I'm going to kind of dab in like I did there some different colors, and let me follow this kind of, get the edge of this little wrinkly area on his neck. Oops, we missed this whole spot here earlier. And tap in a little bit of this kind of, in the woodland set it's called redwood, and you can make any kind of terracotta type brown. And I think I'll go ahead and do this. So if you were in a tropical island and you went to the gift shop, you might see a turtle like this as a piece of jewelry. Necklace. This is a zoom in on a, probably not a ring or a bracelet. Could be a paperweight. And I'm going to put some sandridge in here in this bigger spot like I did up there, and now just kind of dotting this in, moving around a little more blue, then green. So now we have that done, we can take a cleared off brush and sort of, can even take some very watered down paint. If you really like your lines that you made around each section with your paint, then I would be more careful and specific so that you're not interrupting that. You can just go right over the white area and don't touch the others. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of move quickly here, fill in some of that, just kind of have a little bit of paint in my brush and just kind of dabbing it. And most of that will stay where it is, but I'll just kind of fill in those white areas. And then we have our finished piece.